Good afternoon. My name is Melissa, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Noble WFM conference call. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. If you should need assistance during the call, please press star, then 0, and an operator will come back online to assist you. Thank you. I would now like to turn the call over to Mr. Matt Elliott. You may begin your conference.
Thank you very much. All right, firstly, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us on today's webinar. The topic for today's webinar is all about Noble ShiftTrack and workforce management. So we'll just step down firstly to the next slide here. You can see there's a little picture of myself and my position within the company. I've been with the company for some 10 years now, specialising largely in the workforce management area. So this is the software, of course, that I'm extremely familiar with. We'll just step through to the agenda now and what we're going to cover off today. Just before I get into the agenda, if you do have any questions around workforce management and the software, etc., you should have access on your screen to be able to send those questions through by keying in the question. So today's agenda, we're going to cover off what is workforce management and what it's all about, why it's so important to us all. We're then going to go through a solution overview, so the ShiftTrack solution overview, going through each of the modules, what they do, and what the key modules are as well. And then at the end of the presentation, hopefully, we'll have enough time to perform some Q&A. Okay, so what is workforce management? So on this call today, I'm sure we've got some people that have got some understanding of workforce management and some people, of course, that probably don't have a lot of exposure or knowledge of what workforce management's about. This particular phrase or sentence, I guess, best sums up what workforce management is all about. And there's some very key terms and words being used in that particular sentence. Workforce management is the art of having the right number of skilled people and supporting resources in the right place at the right time to handle an accurately forecasted workload at a desired service level and with quality. So that particular sentence does, as I said before, include a number of key words. So it's all about having the right number of people, in particular skilled people, and supporting resources in the right place at the right time. So in other words, from a scheduling perspective, you don't want to be scheduling people to work in the call centre when in fact you probably don't need them. One of the things that we'll talk about shortly is the cost of the workforce and how large that cost is in the operations of a call centre. So to be able to use your resources and your staff as efficiently as possible is really what we're all about when we talk about workforce management. And again, when we're trying to build that forecast, we're trying to handle an accurately forecasted workload based on a service level that we define for the business and with quality. So I guess ultimately we've got two things at play there. We've really got the business needs and the company's needs being what grade of service that they want to offer to their customers when they call in so that they're not on hold or waiting to have their call answered for too long. So they're the business needs. And on the other side of the coin, we have our staffing needs. And those things are when can staff work, when can't they work, how many hours do they need to work per week or per fortnight or month or whatever the case may be, what skills do they have, etc., etc. So really we're trying to marry up the business needs with the staffing needs to get the best outcome for both parties. Okay, so some of the benefits of workforce management. Firstly, I guess the reduced operating costs, as I've touched on before. Running a call centre, the most expensive part of that call centre is typically the staffing costs and the wages, etc., etc. So if you can, I guess, operate your call centre from a staffing and rostering perspective in a more efficient manner and ultimately a cheaper fashion, then you're going to save on dollars, and that's really what you're trying to get as well out of it all, as well as providing a better grade of service to your customers. So it's all about optimising and the better utilisation of resources. So as I said before, scheduling people to work at the right times when you need them rather than when you don't need them. And we'll talk a bit about that in more depth when we get into the product demonstration and discussion shortly. Again, with introducing workforce management software, you're going to have the ability to improve your customer service levels. And the reason for that is because we're able to forecast both inbound and outbound events or calls. Therefore, with that knowledge, we can build a more efficient roster, which therefore will lead to an increase in service level. Adherence to staff, contracts and rules, etc. So the system is able to easily take the staffing information when they can't work, when they can work, what hours they've got to work, etc. And it's able to build a roster automatically based on all of the information that you've given it. Another benefit of workforce management is the ability to decide around cost versus service and managing those particular factors. And largely, I guess, in an overall sense, it's very much a strategic tool to allow us to plan and manage our contact centre and use our time better in doing that. I mean, people that don't have workforce management software, sure, they've got to build a roster in some way, shape or fashion, and without workforce management software, to do that is probably a fairly time-consuming task. So if they're using their time, if they're not using as much time to do that, in other words, the system's doing that for them, then managers have got more time at their disposal to spend on more important and strategic time things. Okay, so the Noble ShiftTrack solution overview. So what we're going to do now is go through some of the products in the suite and what they all mean and what they all do and how they can improve our call centre efficiency. So just there you can see I guess the icons or the labels there of each of the modules there. Firstly, we've got the ShiftTrack Plus module, which is the core application of the software suite. And then we've got some other modules which all work together to give you a better result at the end of the day. So we've got ShiftTrack Agent, ShiftTrack Real Time, ShiftTrack Remote, and ShiftTrack Mobile. And I'll talk about those as we go through this. So the first application that we'll cover off is of course, the core application. So you can see there, we've just got some bullet points around some of the things that we can actually do within this particular application. So we can work through that list, I guess. We've got the personnel data management, so we've got the ability to be able to maintain our staffing information. In other words, when people can work, when they can't work, what team they're a part of, what location they reside at, what hours they've got to work, what their employment contract and rules are all about. So this is where we house that information. We build our schedules in here, and there's a load of different options when it comes to building schedules, and I'll talk about those when we talk about rostering shortly. Skills-based scheduling, so rostering people based on what skills they've got as opposed to what skills they don't have. So in other words, those with more skills, of course, are going to be more beneficial a lot of the time, those that have got multiple skills, and also those people that have skills that are ranked a lot higher. So people that are more proficient in some skills over the others, the system is able to determine what a particular person is better at performing as opposed to what they're not so good at performing. Availability management, this is where you can also, of course, enter in staffing availabilities for when they can work. Intraday management, that's a very important concept within the call centre. Managing your call centre on a daily basis, as I said, is very important. Putting things in such as breaks, the system will allow you to automate that and do it very easily according to the break rules that you've set up and according to the forecast that you've built, and the system will decide the best times for those breaks to occur. This is where you'd also enter in all your sick leave, your partial sick leave, any vacations, etc. there. Contact forecasting, so whether we're forecasting for inbound events, whether we're forecasting for outbound calls, or whether in fact we're forecasting for back office type tasks such as emails or something non-related to the phone, I guess. Agent forecasting, determining how many staff we need. Again, we do all of that within ShiftTrack Plus. Shift optimisation, deciding when the best times are for staff to work. Again, that is all performed within this module. Leave management, the system, of course, needs the ability to know when people can work and can't work based on any vacations that they may have planned. So this is where we'd set that up. And we can also, in fact, set up leave rules and leave thresholds based on not having too many people off at the same time. That's also very important. Back office optimisation I touched on before, and also outbound forecasting and campaign events we can also forecast for. As we just move through the next slide there, you can see this is the main ShiftTrack Plus login screen. As we go through this demonstration, essentially what you're going to be seeing here are screenshots. So what we're seeing here is a screenshot of the core application. So you can see at the top there we've got all of the menus. So under utilities, largely what we set up there are what we call the configuration items. So we tell the system things such as what our locations are, what the time zones are, what the team names are, what the break rules need to be, what the position names are, what skills we have, what queues we're forecasting for, etc., etc. We do that all under that utilities menu up here. Under staff management, that's essentially where we're performing our staff maintenance, okay, adding staff, deleting staff, updating their details. All of those sorts of tasks are performed under staff management. The forecasting menu is there to allow the user to build forecasts, of course, manage forecasts, alter forecasts, even build what-if scenarios. So, you know, what if we increased our grade of service by 10% or reduced it by 10%? What's going to be the effect on the staffing requirement? We can do all that under that menu as well. Under schedule management, this is where we build our schedules and also manage our schedules. So you'll see when I get onto the rostering side of things shortly, from a scheduling perspective, of course, we've got a number of options there when it comes to building our schedules, through from what-if scenarios, how many staff do we ideally need to meet this forecast, through to, of course, building a simulated roster that takes our forecast, takes our staffing information, and builds a roster or schedule very quickly for us. And yeah, we also manage that roster under this particular menu as well. So once the roster's been published and it's available to the staff, we of course need to maintain that and make changes to it as they come up. Whether that's by removing someone's shift because they're now all of a sudden unavailable, whether it's altering someone's start time, whether it's putting in breaks, all of that stuff is performed under the schedule management area of the software. Leave management, under leave management we will configure all of our vacation type leave codes, whether it's sick, whether it's vacation, whether it's long service leave, jury duty, these types of leave codes are all set up, and we can also set thresholds around that so that we don't have too many people going off on leave or on vacation at the same time, and even down to the point of specifying rules around the number of staff from a team on leave at any point in time, the number of staff with the same skill on leave at any point in time. They're all things from a workforce management perspective we really want to try and control so that our resources aren't all going on leave at the same time, I guess. Under reports, we've got some report menus here as well. Some of our own individual reports that we contain under the mine reports, or the common reports that we would put under my reports. And then the other reports, typically we'd have under that reports menu, there's up to 70 reports available within the system. And those reports, and we'll touch on a few of those later, but they vary from adherence type reports through to leave reports, through to roster reports, forecasting reports, and so on. There's a number of reports that can help you provide the information that you're after in a reporting sense, of course, from a WFM perspective. And then down on the right there, we've got some other maintenance type tools, such as going in and managing the leave applications of the staff or the shift swapping applications. We can do all of that there. And then lastly, we have a help menu available as well. So it's an intuitive help menu, so you can do searches, indexes, etc., all within the help menu. So very easy to navigate your way through the system. Underneath that, you'll see there's also a number of icons that the user can configure to display. So essentially, they're just acting as shortcuts. So again, making it very easy for the user to be able to navigate to where they want to get to with one click of a button. Over the right here, we also have the ability to set up our favourites. Those favourites are, by default, our most 6 commonly used items. We can also set up some assistance as well, and then we've got a little calendar down the bottom here. This particular menu structure that you're seeing is a menu structure that you typically see for a super user or the administrator of the system, but you can create as many user profiles as you like and as many users as you like as well. So you might have 2 or 3 main users, you might have 10 or 15 supervisors or team leaders, and you might have some reporting people and intraday people. So you can set up as many profiles as you like, limiting certain access to the software, and you also apply those profiles to the staff that you set up to be able to access the software as well. So very easy to use from a security perspective. Okay, just moving down to the next screen there. What we're looking at there is what we call the Managed Staff screen, or the staff maintenance area of the software. So we're just giving you a bit of a feel there for some of the things that you can key into the software. So we can see we've got a person there, Leslie, head is highlighted. We can see a payroll ID, that is the unique identifier of the person that's being rostered. So these are a list of all our agents. Down the bottom left corner of that, you'll actually see, it'll tell you how many staff you've got listed there. Obviously their surname and first name, what position they hold. You can create those positions yourself. You can see that's all done via the drop-down menu. What location that particular agent is part of. Again, drop down and select what location they're at. You could be rostering for one location or multiple locations. Just another tab of the Managed Staff area there. We've got the Status tab. So it's setting things up such as whether the person is permanent or casual or part-time, what team they're a part of. Again, from the drop-down menu, you can select what team that person is part of, and you would create those teams as well, of course. What rostering strand or rostering department this person is a part of. Within the software, it gives you the ability to create multiple strands or departments for the purposes of rostering. So I guess what I'm saying there is you could have your main call centre roster, and then you could have a separate back office roster if you wanted to, or you could even, if you didn't want to run a blended environment, you could have a separate inbound roster to a separate outbound roster if you wanted to. So you can really create as many rosters as you want for the same location, really. And then down the bottom there, we also set up their skills. So you can see this person has 3 skills. The ratings haven't been configured here, but you would configure their ratings as well. The higher the rating, the more proficient that person is in that particular skill, the more likely that they're going to be put onto those particular duties. If we look at the Hours tab there, this is where we start to talk about and configure 2 things. Firstly, when the staff can work and can't work, and that's all done in the top part of the Hours tab there. So you can see this particular person can't work on can't work on a Wednesday between 7 and 11, and that's a rule. And on a Sunday, their preference is not to work between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. So that doesn't mean they can't work on the Sunday at those times. It means they prefer not to. So the system will cater for rules and preferences. Obviously, a rule is a rule, so the system will never ever schedule Leslie on a Wednesday. However, on a Sunday, she may in fact get scheduled in between 8 and 9:30. So you can extrapolate and set up rules as you need, basically, per agent. Underneath that, we've got some hours per cycle. What is a cycle? Well, that's dependent upon yourself. If you're building a weekly roster, or if you typically build weekly rosters, then you'd set up those hours to be weekly. If you're building fortnightly or monthly rosters, then likewise you'd set those hours up to be monthly hours. How many hours does this person need to work in a roster? Okay, so we can see here Leslie has to work a minimum and a maximum of 25 hours. So what we're telling the system at that point is this person must work 25 hours in the week. Spread across, I guess, 6 days of the week according to that. The only day she can't work is the Wednesday. So from a scheduling perspective, she's pretty flexible. She just can't work the Wednesday, and those 25 hours are spread across those other 6 days. We also specify the shift lengths and how many shift counts or how many shifts they must work in that particular week in this scenario. Okay, what you're seeing there is a forecasting screen. That's, I guess, the very final part of the forecasting. From a forecasting perspective, the system has the ability, and I touched on this earlier, to forecast for inbound events, outbound events or calls, and multimedia events. Okay, so the system is very flexible in that regard. From a forecasting perspective, depending on which way you're building your forecast and what you're forecasting for, it steps you through a wizard. And what you're seeing here is the end process of that wizard. Okay, so in this particular screenshot, you can see most of the week in there, from 9:30 through till about 10:30. You can see on that particular screen. We've opened up and expanded that by queue, so you can actually see in the top half of the screen there the forecasted events or calls for 3 queues: general, gold, and sales. What the average handle time is going to be for each day and for each time range. You can see the time ranges that you're seeing here are all 15-minute based. You might be forecasting 15-minute base intervals or 30-minute base intervals or potentially even an hour. I guess the lower you can go, the better. To that extent, we wouldn't advise you forecast for anything shorter than 15. 15 seem to be the industry standard these days, forecasting in a 15-minute increment. And as I said before, we can see the three queues that we're forecasting for: general, gold, and sales, what the forecasted events or calls are for each of those queues, what the average handling times are, and what the staffing requirements are for those as well. So from a forecasting staff perspective, what we use is an algorithm called Winter's exponential smoothing. Most of you probably aren't familiar with that term or what it all means, but essentially what we're doing there is the system looks at and analyses the historical data to see if there's any trends, any spikes, etc., etc. So from a forecast perspective, it knows which way the call centre is heading. You know, is it typically getting busier at 9 o'clock and 9:30, or does it drop off around lunchtime? Where are the spikes? Where are the troughs, etc.? So the system analyses that all for you rather than just averaging historical data. It actually uses the Winter's exponential smoothing to get that extra efficiency out of determining what we're going to need from a staffing perspective. And also, once it's got that information, to produce the number of staff we require, it uses a simple Erlang C calculation, which again is industry standard. Most of you are probably familiar with the Erlang C calculation. So you can see there, we can see our requirements for the week, our staffing requirements, calls and average handle time, as I said. Down the bottom of that screen, you'll see we have the ability to graph all of that. What you're seeing there is the staffing graph, the staffing requirements graph. You can graph the events, the average handle time, and also the results. Okay, so what are the total number of calls we're going to get for the Monday and the Tuesday? What's the average handle time for a Monday, for a Tuesday? What's the FTE for a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on and so forth? On the right of the screen, where did I go there?
You could probably just click down in there.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. On the right of the screen there, you can see there's an option there around shrinkage, so you can turn shrinkage on and off from a rostering perspective. When it comes to building a schedule, you do want to take into consideration any inactive activities, things such as sick leave, things such as coaching sessions, training sessions, meetings, etc. We want to know about that in advance so that we in fact schedule more people than what we actually need, knowing that on the day that we're going to have some inactive people ringing up sick, as I said before, people going to coaching sessions. That's very important from a scheduling and a planning perspective, because if you don't allow for that, you're going to come unstuck on the day. So that's a bit about the forecasting process there. What you're seeing there is a screenshot of the roster building process. You can see there the system has gone and built us a roster based on, again, a wizard that we've gone through. You can see all the people with shifts that the system's been allocating. Some people are on leave. And down the bottom there you can see the system building the roster based on the simulation method. So what we mean by that is that it's taking the forecast, it's simulating that forecast, and then grabbing the staffing information and putting the two together and simulating the forecast and roster build to produce the most efficient roster possible. So again, best practice would suggest that's the way to go and build your roster. So if we have another look at a simulation screen there, there's just a breakdown of the outputs of that simulation. Down the bottom you can see, I think, a graph of expected grade of service. So up front you know how you're going to perform in advance, which is also very important information. So if you know you're going to achieve close to 100%, well, maybe you can start to do some scheduling of some coaching sessions and meetings and so on and so forth. And then you can also see some other results around occupancy, staffing occupancy, etc., etc. So there's just a bit of I guess, a feel for the results screen that you'd see. What we're looking at there is actually a roster. Okay, so we can see our actual finished roster. This is where you go and actually manage the roster. So we've built a weekly roster, so guess what? We see a weekly roster. If I'd have built a 2-week or a 4-week roster, I'd see that as well all in one go. So that's what we call the quick roster editor, viewing our roster in one go. Very quickly I can see just there, you know, what's Gillian Adams at the top there, what's she doing for the week? What's Leanne Rowe doing for the week? And so on. So I can very easily and quickly see what my staff are doing for the week. And again, as I said before, I can make any changes if the changes are required there. Alternatively, I can also make those changes on an intraday level. So what we're seeing there is a drilled down version of the roster for that particular day. So down the bottom part of the screen, you'll actually see our forecast, which is the blue line, and the green line, which is the actual roster. So you can see there we're treading a fine line, I guess, throughout most of the day, which is good, because I guess what you're looking at there is a very efficient roster. What you'll also notice too is those two lines follow very, very similar patterns. And the reason for that is because of the way that the breaks will have been optimised. The system decides the best times to take those breaks based on the rules. So you can configure some break rules that say for an 8-hour shift, give them a break, a 15-minute break anywhere from 1.5 hours into the shift to 2 hours into the shift. Give them their 30-minute lunch break anywhere from 3.5 to 4 hours into the shift, and an afternoon tea break in the afternoon at some time. So the system takes that information and decides exactly where to put those breaks for all of the staff. You'll also see up the top of that screen our staff, their names, etc. But more importantly, you'll see their shifts represented by those bars. Inside those bars, you'll probably see some breaks indicated with that, I guess, light aqua colour. And you'll also see some red activities which indicate periods of inactivity. So the second person on that list is obviously called in sick. To do that, we would have clicked that blue button above at the top of that in those icons. That will immediately put that person on sick leave. And in the middle of that list, I think there's a few people that have some scheduled meetings. So again, the system can determine the best times for those meetings to occur. Or in fact, if you want to tell the system when to do that, you can do that as well. We'll just go through a few of the reports. As I said, there's about 70 reports in the system. Obviously, some are more frequently used than others. This is a sample cost report that you're seeing here. So we've got the ability to go into the system and find out how much is our roster going to cost us. Okay, well, this is telling us down the very bottom, these 149 staff, you can see down here, it's going to cost us a tick over $21,000. And by day of week, it gives us the breakdown. We can see the staffing information and rates here, and that's all graphed accordingly. And it's based on both ordinary time and overtime. So that's just one example of one of the reports that we have. Another sample report that you're seeing here is what we call the activity analysis report. This allows us to run a report to see how our time is being spent across the week. So you'll see in the time range or the date range here, this was run for just 1 week, and you can see how all of our hours are being allocated to the different activities throughout the week. Okay, so if we have a look at, say, sick leave, we can see we've got 165 hours of sick leave in that roster. We've got some secondment, people on secondment. We've got some meetings been allocated, some coaching sessions, and so on and so forth. So a really good way to see how that time is being spent in our roster. An intraday analysis report shows us a forecast to actual comparison. Unfortunately, in this example, you can't see any actuals, but if this was in a live environment, I guess, you could see some actual calls to see how you're actually tracking for the day, from a calls perspective, an average handling time perspective, and a staffing perspective. We can also run things such as the shift equity report, things that track, who's working Saturdays, who's working Sundays, trying to get a feel for, who's got the most Sundays, who's had the least Sundays, Saturdays, and so on and so forth. And you can, in fact, drill that report down to time of day if time of day equity is also a request or a focus for you. Okay, so that's a bit of an introduction there to ShiftTrack Plus. We're now going to go through some of the other modules within the product suite. ShiftTrack Remote is our web-based tool. This gives the agents the ability to be able to view their rosters online. They can actually check for availability and change their availability. So rather than going up and speaking to a team leader or manager, they can just enter all that information via ShiftTrack Remote. They can apply for leave via ShiftTrack Remote, and when doing so, can actually see if there are any leave slots available. I'll show you a screenshot of that shortly. The staff can, in fact, apply for shift swaps. Okay, so they can swap amongst themselves, and we can also display any KPIs or performance management type factors back to the agents. In this screenshot here, here's just a sample of an agent logging in and viewing their roster in a calendar grid type view. In this particular screen, you'll actually see the person's actually checking it for any available slots for annual leave or vacation leave, and you can see it's all green, so it's all good. Okay, they can actually go and apply for leave for that particular month for any given day based on that. And as I said before, you can also drill down and decide how many staff you want off on leave at any point in time. And if you do that, it'll tell you exactly, or tell the agent exactly how many slots are available as well. This is the performance management or agent analytics side of things that I touched on a moment ago. In this example here, we can see this agent is logged on, and they can actually view their stats for the day, for the week, for the month, however you'd like that configured. We can see there we've got some calls taken stats, how many calls they've transferred, what the number of outbound calls they've made, the average talk time, the average after call time, etc. And that can all be married against and compared against the team, the location, whatever. You decide how you want that all to work, and that's a very popular feature for a lot of our clients. They like the ability to present that back to the staff because the staff can actually get that information without having to actually schedule one-on-ones to provide that feedback to the staff. And here's just some further examples of that from a reporting perspective. We can see how many calls they've handled directly, how many they've passed on, what their average work times are, and talk times, and so on and so forth. So just an extension, really, of that last indicator. And we can also set up any thresholds, what's good, what's bad, etc. The cross indicates they haven't met that KPI. ShiftTrack Mobile is our new mobile application specifically designed for mobile phones. So if we have a look here, it's where the agent can actually go in and view their rosters via their smartphone, so they check their rosters, they can apply for shift swaps, leave, etc. All the sorts of things they can typically do within ShiftTrack Remote, they can now perform via what we call ShiftTrack Mobile. There's just a sample screenshot of an agent, I guess, logging onto their phone there, and on the right-hand side, you can actually see the person looking at their roster with the green indicating the fact that they've got shifts on those days. ShiftTrack Agent is our pop-up alert tool for the agents, our agent reminder tool. This particular tool sits in the system tray of the agent's desktop to allow them to manage their own adherence. So, for example, the system will pop up and tell that person when to go to break, when they're changing activities, be it going to a meeting session, a coaching session, etc. The system will prompt the agent to do that without a supervisor or someone having to come around and tell the person that they've got their break coming up or whatever. So this really helps manage adherence a lot. So it's a really critical tool to have, which helps your adherence, because at the end of the day, when you schedule someone to work and when you schedule someone to go to the break, that's what you in fact want them to do, because that's best for the business. So you want people adhering to their rosters, and this tool aids in that process. So you'll see there just a screenshot of how it looks. It's all traffic light based, so green means work, orange means prepare to change or go to break or whatever the case may be, and red means that's it, that's the end, you're inactive, you're either finished for the day or you're in a meeting or whatever the case may be. Any break changes or activity changes that occur during the day are notified as well to the agent via this particular tool. So if we had to re-optimise our breaks this afternoon because of certain events, either we're busier than expected, a lot of people are bringing up sick, whatever the case may be, you can re-optimise the breaks, and those changes in break times are sent to the agent's desktop. ShiftTrack Real-Time Adherence is all about adhering to schedule. So this particular application does two main things, really. It takes the person's roster, takes that person's actual status according to the phone or the telephony system, compares the two to decide whether staff are in adherence or out of adherence. So on this particular screen here, we can see that in effect. You can see the people's payroll IDs, their names, what shift they're on, what location they're part of, what team they're based in, what strand or department they're in, what they're rostered to be doing right now, that's very important information, and what they're actually doing right now. So we can see here the fourth person on that list is rostered to be in sales. They're actually logged in, so they're adhering. Whereas the person above them is rostered to be on the phones, on the service, in the service area. They're actually logged out, so they're not adhering. So we can see whether they're adhering, yes or no. Red means no, green means yes to adherence. We can also set little warnings and thresholds around adherence as well, and we can also track how long the staff have been in that state for, as well as their current adherence for the day. Down the bottom, all of that information can also be graphed. How many people do we have at break right now? How many people are rostered to be in a meeting now? How many people are rostered to be at lunch? How many people are rostered to be on the phones right now? How many people are actually logged out? How many people are actually logged in, etc., etc. All of that information is graphed. Down the bottom here, we have an example of an adherence report. So we can see here a list of all of the staff and what their adherence percentages were for the date range that you run this report for. So some great reporting from an adherence perspective, because I know for a lot of organisations, adherence is a KPI. And obviously it's very important that we have our staff adhering to their schedules, because if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then they're obviously doing the wrong thing and what we didn't ask them to do. So being able to track that and report on that is very important. So yeah, just in summary, why Noble ShiftTrack Workforce Management? Well, we can give you the ability to create, forecast and optimise staffing schedules in an easy-to-use fashion. As I've said a few times now, the forecasting's always driven, the rostering's always driven. It's all very easy to use. We can manage the schedules more efficiently and effectively. So at the moment, if you're managing rosters without WFM, my guess is that's all being done on an Excel spreadsheet, which typically only one person can access. In this scenario, you've got multiple people accessing the same roster, all making changes where they need to, etc., all housed in a central system, all being backed up, etc. It aids us in the communication lines between our agents and our managers. So agents can now apply for leave online. The managers can approve that. That all goes back to them via email, etc. And lastly, we're capturing and analysing critical contact centre data all within the one easy-to-use application. We've only got about a minute to go here, so I'm very quickly going to turn it over to Q&A and just have a bit of a look at some of the questions that we've got here. So just give me a look here. We've got a question around how much data must be collected before the forecast works, and also will it notify if there's a shortfall. So I guess there's two questions there. The first one, how much data needs to be collected? Well, I guess at a minimum you probably want at least 3 or 4 weeks. When the software gets installed and configured, we've got the ability to actually go into your telephony system and get that information, so that's not a problem. The data feed itself is automated, that happens regularly. So, but yeah, at a minimum you probably want at least 3 or 4 weeks. You can get away with less, but we wouldn't recommend that. Also, will it notify when there's a shortfall? Well, definitely it will, both when you're building your rosters and also when you're looking at that intraday management screen that I touched on before, the micro roster editor. You can see the unders and the overs. That's all in there. And does Noble Workforce Management work independently of Noble Dialers? Absolutely, yes it does. It's a point solution, so we can if we want to, and if you want to, more importantly, if this WFM needs to be installed on its own, then yes, we can integrate to other platforms as well. So I guess that wraps it up for today's session. Thanks for those questions, by the way. They were both very good questions, and thank you also for your time today. I hope you found it very informative, and if you've got any further questions, feel free to contact us via info@noblesystems.com. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for joining today's conference call. You may now disconnect your lines.